Everyone. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Maha Bailey. I'm a professor of practice at the American University in Cairo. And I got to write this paper with Anna, Anuj, and Yasser, who are my co-facilitators here, because we all started talking about using metaphors for AI on Twitter. And so Anuj is actually the one who invited us all to write a paper about it. So I'll hand over to him to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Anuj. I'm a PhD student at the University of Arizona, and I'm doing a dissertation on critical AI literacy. And I'm really excited to be here. Anna, Yasser, Maha have been they've played a very fundamental role in my thinking about AI, and so have many of you. I recognize some names from Twitter, from LinkedIn. So thanks so much for joining, and we're excited that you're here. And I'll ask Anna to introduce herself.
Thanks. I'm Anna Mills. I'm a writing teacher at College of Marin in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was just amazing to collaborate with Maha and Anuj and Yasser on this paper. And I'm looking forward to this conversation today and super excited about all the folks who are joining us. So I'll turn it over to Yasser to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anna. I'm Yasser Tamer. I'm a student at the American University in Cairo, and I've been also interested in AI, especially with this sort of ideas of ChatGPT and other LLMs. And I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
All right, I'm just going to share screen for a second and then hand over to Anna. I have problems with my internet. I'm not at home, so I think it's better that I don't share screen for too long. Or maybe I shouldn't share screen at all. Yeah, okay. This is just our intro slide about using metaphors to develop critical AI literacy. And someone this morning, or at some point, was talking about how people should avoid using metaphors. And I was thinking, actually, even if you avoid it, people are still exposed to it, right? Like whether or not we talk about metaphors in our teaching, everyone is exposed to metaphors of AI all the time. So I think it's important to develop the critical literacy to deal with that as well. So Anna has a question for us all on Mentimeter.
Yes. And you can let me put the link in the chat. 1 second. Sorry about that.
Just so you can think about the question while she gets.
There's the Mentimeter link in the chat. So just asking, what is a metaphor for AI that you have heard others use? Something that stands out in your mind that is important somehow in shaping thinking about AI. What are the big metaphors? Let's see. Let me put that link one more time in case you get it.
And you can share ones that you don't like.
Share screen with the results. Yeah, ones that you don't like, ones that you do like, just ones that are influential. So let me share 1 second. Here we go. Oh, wow. Stochastic parrot, definitely. Calculator, yes. But interesting, we also have centaur, okay, god, child, robot, our algorithmic lords, overlords, possibly. Enthusiastic intern, I think that's Ethan Mollick, right? Automaton, text paper mache, yes, I think that's Emily Bender, right? Interesting. So calculator and stochastic parrot are the top so far. And stochastic parrot coming from the paper that Emily Bender and others wrote that was so influential. Yes, I think she is. But she and all the co-authors of that paper, so Margaret Mitchell and Timnit Gebru and others, right? Who were fired from Google for that paper. Okay, so this is interesting. So this is where we're starting out. Job stealer. Okay, interesting. That might be a direct accusation as well as a metaphor. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of more of the negative ones. That's interesting. Centaur, I think of that one is a person using AI, right? Like the AI human combination to do a job. That's what I think of Centaur as referring to in the AI context. But if anyone wants to clarify that, that'd be awesome. Yeah, thanks, James Faulkner and Liza. Okay, awesome. We're on the same page about that. Half human, half something else. Yeah. Um, okay. So I think our next, we want to build on that kind of, I think I'm going to turn it now to Anuj to introduce the paper. So
Thank
with that warm up, we're going to move into what we explored, and then we'll have breakout groups.
Perfect. Thank you. Anna, are you operating the slides?
Happy to let you share. Let me give it up.
Oh, perfect.
Still sharing?
Thank you. And I'm gonna quickly go on slideshow mode. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, this paper, for those of you who are not familiar, basically when ChatGPT came to the market, we saw this huge kind of discourse emerge on Twitter, on social media, and all of us in our different capacities were very interested by certain metaphors that we saw floating about AI and how they were kind of shaping our attitudes, our behaviors, and different kinds of kind of dispositions towards thinking about AI. So we started the paper with just kind of meeting together and reflecting on what we were hearing in the discourse around us about ChatGPT. And really, the kind of conceptual background for this kind of thinking is metaphor theory. And essentially, what is a metaphor? It's something that enables us to connect two disparate words, concepts, or things together such that some sort of transference of qualities happens, often between a more abstract thing to a more concrete thing. So, examples like what we are really familiar with from school, something like she was a brave lion. Things like this help us make the abstract concept of bravery a little more concrete by thinking about an animal, a lion, which we associate with similar qualities. So why is all of this important? We kind of grew up thinking about metaphors as just decorative devices for poetry, right? But over the last few decades, cognitive linguists like Lakoff and Johnson, they've done really important research to help us understand that metaphors play a very important role in shaping how we perceive objects and ideas, thereby shaping our attitudes and behaviors. Let's give you some examples. Two examples. Let's think of hidden metaphors when we talk about the concept of arguments. These are some sentences you might have heard about arguments, right? He attacked every weak point in my argument. I demolished his strategy. I demolished his argument. If you use that strategy, he'll win the argument. He shot down all of my arguments. So essentially, what we're seeing here is that in our current world, in our current society, we often understand the abstract idea of arguments using a hidden metaphor of war, which is why we perform arguments in that particular manner. And this is so ingrained in us that it often feels difficult to even try and imagine, hey, could it be a metaphor? Like, is it really behind it? But once you stack all these sentences together, you try and underline these words, Lakoff and Johnson really help you understand that this is what we are doing. And this is what we see around us, right? On social media, on the screen right now, I have an image generated by ChatGPT where lots of people are fighting, talking in social media comments. This is exactly what the political discourse is like in the news. And this is why argumentation has become so heated because we have that metaphor operating at the back of our mind. But imagine a different world where metaphors were imagined differently. Let's say instead of war, we were imagining arguments like song and dance. Maybe people in this imaginary world would say things like, he harmonized every weak point in my argument. I jammed with his argument. If you use that rhythm, she loved that argument. Or our arguments were very pleasing to the ear. In this hypothetical world, you might have like a very different kind of way in which people carry out discussions and debates and things like that. And this is not just like present in abstract concepts, it's used to shape political beliefs very actively around us every day. To give you two famous examples, Dr. Martin Luther King used the metaphor of a dream to give a certain emotional value to his famous civil rights speech. And a few years ago, Donald Trump called his impeachment a witch hunt to try and kind of imply certain ideas in his audience's mind about how the entire legal proceedings were unfair and kind of something that they should fight against. So, all of these metaphors, we know the kind of actual political, physical impact that they've had in the world. So, this is kind of the background thinking. And what we were doing in our paper essentially is that we were analyzing metaphors that we saw being used to describe generative AI tools like ChatGPT in the public sphere around us. We collaboratively reflected on the kind of emotions, perceptions, behaviors, attitudes that these metaphors were cultivating in us. And what we did was, through our mutual discussions, we plotted them on a graph that kind of helped us see what is the spectrum of ideological positions that are emerging from these various metaphors. And through this exercise, in our paper, we essentially kind of argue that this sort of critical metaphor reflection can be used by teachers to build critical AI literacies in their students. And what we will be doing today is that we will be inviting you to experience a kind of prototype of this activity. And we hope that you find it useful to tweak it and take it back to your classrooms. So I now invite Maha, I believe, for the next part of the workshop. And I'll stop sharing my screen. So Maha, you can take it
All
away.
right. So my internet's really bad, so I'll have my camera off. It's a little bit better that way. So in today's workshop, we're sort of gonna run two prototype activities with you, things that you could do or tweak for your classrooms. And Anuj, Anna, and I will tell you how we use them in our classrooms. But the first activity using breakout rooms, Yasser is actually gonna describe. So I'm gonna hand over to Yasser to describe it, and then I'll share my screen to show you the document we'll be working on.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I can't turn my video on because I'm also having an internet issues. So basically, we have had some questions in our paper to guide our thinking and you know, thinking about around metaphors, and then we thought we would have you just play around these questions. So some of the questions that we have in our paper include, and actually I'm not going to read them all, but there is in the document you're going to find them all. So what feelings does metaphor evoke? Where does it help us understand AI? And what kind of perspective does it push the listener to imagine about AI? So these questions help us, as I said, imagine how we can conceptualize metaphors into what we're gonna go to it right now, which is how we can think about them.
Yeah.
So basically, in the breakout. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to share my screen and then describe the document. Is that okay? Yes,
Yeah.
if I
Okay.
so I have to take over now. Yeah. So the document that you're going to open has a link to each breakout room number. I'm going to put you in groups of like 3 or 4, and it's a table, right? So you have 3 metaphors. You write up the metaphors that you choose to work on. So I've just picked 3 random ones: calculator, Wikipedia, and parrot. And then fill in whichever of these, does it help us understand AI? What perspective does it push? Is it helpful or harmful? And you can describe that. So for example, I put in for calculator, it has this feeling of inevitability, right? Like everybody's going to use it anyway eventually when people say AI is like a calculator. Or like Wikipedia sounds like something that people used to initially resist but future accept in the future. What does the metaphor of parrot do? How does it make us understand AI? Things like that. So if you go down the document, you'll find room 1. So when you go to a breakout room, you usually can see which room number you're in. So you can just pick it from the very beginning here and just click on the room number and you'll go there. And just write your names if you want. Choose some metaphors. Maybe if I put you in groups of 3, each person can choose 1 metaphor. That would be a good a good way to solve that. Okay. So I'm thinking 5 minutes. Does that sound reasonable? And we'll also have a quiet room if someone isn't in a very talkative mood. You can just make a copy of this table and just work on your own. So I'll make a breakout room that's a quiet room. If you don't want to be in one of the rooms, just move yourself. So there will be 6 rooms without the co-hosts and a quiet room. Does anybody have any questions about what you're going to do? And you can move yourself, as I said, so you won't be stuck there if you want to work on your own. All right, let me see how many people are in the document. Quite a lot of people are in the document. Okay, good. All right, we'll see you back in 5 minutes. I'm just going to look at the rooms in case a room has like everybody went to the quiet room, so someone ended up alone.
Right.
Right now, it doesn't seem to be a problem. Oh, and Yasser dropped off, so he ended up being assigned.
Oh, but he's
Or he
back.
moved himself. He does that sometimes. Like he just wants, if you want to jump into any of the rooms, feel free to do that, of course. So Liza Long, not Lisa Long. When she said
No,
Manelli, that means nothing to me. I was not
okay.
sure if that was a Minelli or Minelli. Like I asked her, is it an I?
Right.
And she
I
didn't
think
answer.
talking
She
about
gave me an
Liza
answer that was,
Minnelli. There was this Liza Minnelli, the film star, right? And
yeah, I don't know her. That's not a very culturally relevant example.
yeah,
Chris,
yeah.
is there 2 of you, Chris?
Oh
Or
yeah, I think he had 2, so maybe he just bounced one back out and is actually in
okay,
one of the rooms.
Anna
okay.
and Maha, just to get
Yeah.
clarity,
Mhm.
each group is going to analyze different metaphors, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Whatever they pick. Yeah.
yeah, whatever they pick.
Cool.
Let's see if that's happening.
It's not, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah,
Uh,
I want
they're
to
just
make sure the document is shared.
The document is shared. I'm just wondering whether the assumption might be that they're supposed to use whatever metaphors we've used in the sample.
Um, that's
Let's see.
free
We
to
can just yeah, I know
do
Okay,
somebody's
I
saying
see. I
algorithmic
see.
artisan. I'm seeing that.
Yes. Room 2, I see
I
no
think
metaphors.
yeah, I think they're still talking is all. But they're in the balance bike.
like,
No,
yeah.
they're okay. They're okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I can see people are talking. I love this version of Zoom because I know that people are talking in the room.
Mhm.
Oh, you can see
So
the mics.
Yeah.
That is so
yeah,
creepy.
Yeah.
it's a little bit creepy,
Pretty or
but the
nice.
broadcast voice is really creepy. You can broadcast your voice
Oh,
to
really?
the
Oh my
rooms.
God. Oh.
Oh, Big Brother, very Big Brother.
Mm,
Hmm.
yikes.
I think if we find them like they haven't filled the table yet, we can give them more time. But I think if they analyze one metaphor, that's good enough.
Hmm. Who's introducing um the how we've used it in teaching? Do we have somebody starting that? I
I
forgot.
can do that. I can introduce it and then hand over to you guys.
Thanks.
I can say the thing about the but if we haven't discussed the rhetorical and critical, the critical rhetorical functional, it would be weird for me to describe how I use it without us. I think we discussed that first. Wait, let me see the slides.
No, we
Because I
haven't
don't
yet.
know.
It's
Yeah, I know,
next.
but will we before?
It's not, it's scheduled to come after we talk about how we use it in teaching, but we can switch it.
Yeah, I think we'll need to do that.
Okay.
But okay. So before it's their turn, just before their turn, right? So I'll just, slides
yeah.
18 and 19, I'm just gonna, can you move them so that I don't mess them up for you? So slides 18 and 19, we just need to move them after slide 23, just before your turn,
Yeah,
right?
I can do that.
Mm-hmm. But when they come back, hi, Mark, they are in breakout rooms and coming back in 36 seconds-ish.
Wait a minute.
But I see that people have been discussing but not writing. Some of them are writing. Let's give them an extra minute, I think. So Mark, I'll put the link in the chat to what they're working on so you have an idea. We've been talking about metaphors for AI and that people are exposed to them whether or not we teach them about it. So it's important to sort of develop critical literacy around the impact of metaphors on our understanding of things and how we feel about things. I'm going to keep them open a little bit. I'm going to send them, let them, I'll give you 1 more minute.
So who's going to explain what's now slide 18 and 19 are where we explain functional, critical, rhetorical. Did you want to do that, Anuj, since that was kind of you're the one who brought that to us?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Cool. And then we give the examples and then the graphs come after the examples, I'm thinking.
No, the graphs need to come earlier because I can't explain how I use it in my class. Oh, wait, no, wait, yeah, we do need to show, okay, we need to show hours. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna move slides 23 to earlier.
Okay, so let me move 22 and 23 to before the teaching examples. There. I think we're good now.
I think we're good now, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully my share screen will work properly when I'm sharing how to do the next activity. Inshallah, it'll work.
Inshallah.
Okay, I think let's bring them back. And, yeah, one of the groups is so busy. Room 6, oh my God.
It's cool.
They're like really filled up. Slides.
Are they coming back or?
I haven't closed the room yet. Because they look like they're
Maybe
having
let's
a
give
good
them another
time.
couple of minutes, yeah.
Well, a couple of minutes is a lot, but like maybe
Okay.
like 15 seconds or something.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I pick up some of the things they wrote when they
Yeah,
first come?
yes,
So
please.
I think let's close the rooms because we just have like half an hour left. Yeah. Does it look to you guys as co-hosts that the rooms have been closed or not?
It says
Yeah,
they'll
it's
close in 6 seconds.
yeah, it's I think my connection has a like a 15
Expired.
second lag or something.
Okay, they're closed now.
We just
Oh,
recorded this entire conversation, by the way. We didn't say anything bad about anybody, did we?
No.
so it still says all
Behind
breakout.
the scenes in the workshop. Sorry, say what in it?
No, nothing.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone.
Back.
There's still a few people coming back in. I know there's never enough time, but I hope you managed to have a good conversation in your rooms. Is there anything, let us know in the chat if there's anything in particular that stood out for you during the conversation. I was looking at what you were writing, and I love the one about sort of the enthusiastic intern that is like someone who doesn't want to say they don't understand or they don't know the answer. And also that you have to accept responsibility for what the intern does. So same with AI. I like that one. I
For me,
saw some of the groups
Maha,
fill the entire table. Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
not more of the content, it's more of the energy. It's actually the discussions are very energetic and different. It brings out very good energy when we are discussing it. So that's what I noted.
Thanks, Irene. That's lovely to hear. Right, and Light is saying you started talking about how it gets stuff wrong a non-significant percent of the time. Yes, non-insignificant, obviously, yes. And Veronica, there's never enough time. Goodness, that's an apt description of both MyFest and life. Okay, thanks, Veronica. I hope you guys enjoyed this exercise and can sort of imagine how you might use something like that with your students. And so the next part is we're actually going to share a little bit more about what we did and also how we've been using it with our students. And so, Anuj, are you going to sort of describe how we did our charts? And then
Yes. Um, Also, I just want to say that we've been reading all the metaphors that you all have come up with in the sheet. They're so cool. I wish we'll get to them in a minute, but just to quickly share my screen once again and show you what do we do now that we have the metaphors. Oops, I don't share it. I do a slideshow. Okay. So basically
we're
after
seeing your
doing
desktop. Is it just me? I'm seeing your desktop.
I see the slides.
Oh, my internet is horrible today. Okay, I'm gonna shut up.
Okay. No worries. So yeah, once we started doing this kind of reflection, we realized that, okay, where do we go from here, right? Like find metaphor shape attitudes, but what do we really do with that? So the first thing that came to mind as kind of most of us being qualitative researchers is that maybe we could use some of these questions to qualitatively code what we were finding. And once we started doing the coding, we started arranging the metaphors along an XY graph where we thought of two dimensions. One dimension was how humanized or how anthropomorphized a particular metaphor was. Like, was it very human-like, or was it more animal or plant-like, or was it non-living completely? And the other dimension that we started thinking of was inspired from the work of Stuart Selber, who's given something called the multi-literacies framework, which I'll briefly explain. So Selbert basically kind of gives a certain philosophical way of thinking about literacies and digital literacies, especially. What he says is that we should think about them along three interrelated kinds of literacies. The first is a functional literacy. It's easy to understand it as something that's positive. Like if you're using a tool, you need to know how it basically functions, what's the basic things that you can do with it in the context of ChatGPT. Things like how to get an account, how to prompt it, how to see its output, how to integrate it, those kinds of basic literacies. Then critical literacies, which an easier way to think about them is kind of like negative, although I don't necessarily like the word, but to see the flaws and pitfalls of some kind of technology. And rhetorical literacies then is to mix the two, where you use a technology but do so in critically informed ways. And what Selber's framework allowed us to do is to think about each of these as kinds of literacies that we need to build in our classrooms. And why we want to focus on this is because usually we see that teachers like us also usually will focus either on the positive kinds of literacies or the negative kinds of literacies, but we're really trying to push for a synthetic version out of these. So here is the graph you see on your screens. On the x-axis is the anthropomorphic dimension that we came up with. And on the y-axis is the Stewart-Selber framework that we came up with. And we started plotting the metaphors on it. For example, something like a genie or a magician, which is often a metaphor that we see for AI being used. It is semi-human, so it's at the center on the x-axis. But on the kind of uh, Selber framework, we thought that it's a mixture of both. It kind of tells us that, okay, you can use this genie to do something, whatever you want, but it kind of also evokes some critical ideas. Like, for example, a genie, based on like what literature you've read, a genie is also somewhat of a servant, somewhat of a slave to a master. So it makes you think about like what are the power dynamics inherent in this. So using both of these, we felt like it was more of a mixed rhetorical view of literacy. So that's what we essentially started to do in our paper. And now I will ask, or
There's
there,
more. Just keep
oh yes,
going, enter, and more of them will
sorry, I didn't know
show.
if they were everything was there on the slide. So for example, assistant would be at the top left of the graph because it's very human, but it's also a very functional view of it. It's not really generating too much of a critical view, whereas calculator would be on the top right because it's non-human and it's also creating a functional view. And the idea is that our interpretations are not objective or universal, right? For the same metaphor, some people could feel that this is more critical or this is more functional, but it just allowed us to express everything that we were seeing. So here are all the metaphors that we had come up with in the paper. And as our title will tell you, it shows some of them like parrot, and also colonizing loudspeaker is a very interesting metaphor that we saw in some of the literature, where the idea was that because ChatGPT and similar tools are enforcing a certain kind of English as the standard English in its outputs, it's kind of acting as this loudspeaker, which is drowning out the voices of marginalized people. It came from a paper by Owusu Ansah, I think. So yeah, this is what we did. And what we'd like you to do now is
Oh, no,
to,
wait. Let's explain to them how we use it in class very quickly and then let them, I think, because
I'm so
that's,
sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's okay. So I'm just going to say very quickly in my class, I give them an empty version of this chart, but on the y-axis, I think my students would be confused by the term rhetorical, critical, functional. So I just say positive, mixed, and negative, but I put them in the order where the mixed is in the middle. If you notice over here, the functional is at the top, the critical is in the middle, and the rhetorical is at the bottom. Whereas when I put the rhetorical in the middle and I name it mixed and I say positive and negative, it's a little bit easier for my undergraduate non-native speakers students to understand. And I let them use their own metaphors. So we do the metaphor word cloud first, and they can see it, but on different boards, they're filling it in and they're discussing it as they put it in. And the funny thing is that I can see all the different boards at the same time when they're filling it in. And I sometimes see things like magician being placed as positive by some students and being placed as negative by other students.
Exactly.
And it's very interesting because in Arab culture, magic has a very negative connotation that I know there's black magic and there's different kinds of magic, but in the Arab culture, it's mostly towards the negative. And so it really depends on the student's background and how they're seeing that particular term. And when they use it, do they mean it in a good way or a bad way? Like fast food usually has a negative connotation, but some people really like fast food. Like they might not even see it as a bad thing at all, you know? So yeah, so that's how I use it. Anna, what were you gonna share about?
Yeah. So I don't use it explicitly as metaphor because but I start out with an assignment where they pick a meme to analyze about AI. And these are three that my students picked that are based on metaphors. And I feel like this kind of indirect approach, I was asking them to analyze them using fast and slow thinking. So I had a bunch of questions that I've linked to on this assignment that were similar to the questions we asked about the metaphors. So what feelings come up? What questions does this raise? What assumptions does it make? What more do you need to know to think about this? What more do you want to understand? So with metaphors like, ChatGPT is this child smirking because she's maybe burned down a house, that represents human knowledge. Um, that's an elaborate, extended metaphor, but it raises this question of, well, what is ChatGPT burning something down? Is it burning down human knowledge? In what way is it attacking human knowledge? And in what way should we consider that it has some kind of smug sense about it? Or where does that smugness lie? Is it with ChatGPT or is it with some aspect of the culture? We could ask all kinds of questions about that With Pandora's box, it raises the question of, well, what is it unleashing on the world? Is it, all negative? Like in this, that's what the center meme is about, this idea from Greek mythology of Pandora's box, unleashing troubles on the world. And then the third one was chosen by a student that was much more positive about AI, this sense that that maybe AI is more like a butterfly that only brings sort of gentleness and wonder and positive feelings to humans. So that was kind of a pushback against the more negative metaphors. And you see the questioning of the science fiction metaphors of sort of a Terminator style robot there. So that was interesting to me how memes often rely on metaphor and visual metaphor, and even without bringing in the terminology, I didn't feel like my students were ready for that at the beginning of the semester to talk about functional, critical, and rhetorical, but they could do that kind of analysis, more organically, in a way that was guided by their own interests, in using this sort of slow thinking approach to the memes. So that was me. And now I think Anuj was going to share how you've used it in your teaching.
I want to actually request Maha that maybe we should move on to the next activity in the interest of time. I think we have a lot of metaphors that participants have come up with, and that'll be nice
Okay,
for that.
sure. Sure. So for the next activity, we're using the slide deck so that you can do what we've been doing. So I'm going to put the link to the slides in the chat again. And so you can use metaphors that we've used so far. You can look back at the Google Doc and see all the metaphors people put in. You could try to remember sort of some of the ones that came out when Anna was sharing. I hope the screen share works well for me. So basically we've created slides. Okay, thanks, Anuj. So starting slide 25, we've created slides that's similar with the chart and everything. And then basically we've created boxes for you that right now say metaphor, but Anuj, if you could just edit one of them and move it so you can sort of demo what people would do.
So let's say you write an assistant, you'd type it out here in this box, and then you could simply move it and reduce its size wherever on the graph you feel like it fits best according to what you decided.
Yeah. Does that sound reasonable? Shall we put you back in the same groups? Have you formed a bond already? And maybe you've already had a discussion going. So yeah, so we can keep you in the same groups. Does anybody have any questions before you go? So let's give you what, 8 minutes? And then if we find like you're filling up the slides really fast, we'll close it earlier. Is that okay? This is the good thing about having you do something. I can tell if you're getting somewhere or not by what you're doing on the slides. So okay. All right. So 8 minutes. And again, there's a quiet room. If anyone doesn't want to talk, you can just create another slide and work on your own. All right, we'll see you back in 8. Okay, it's about 10 seconds and people will be back. Someone said sabotaging assistant as a metaphor. I like that one a lot.
I like it.
And there's a
Sabotaging.
misunderstood pet, which is, aw, that makes me feel sad for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swiss Army knife. That's a really good one, actually.
That was fun.
They came up with new metaphors in the breakout room. Like we could just keep going on forever, I think, with these.
I'm gonna quickly share my screen so we can skim through some of the things that came up.
Welcome back, everyone. We love what you guys have been doing.
Yeah. I'm just skipping through the slides. We were actually really surprised by people who've used emojis. Whoever has come up with this idea of the robot shitting, could you please talk a little bit about your idea? if you want to, no pressure. Bot
Is
shit.
it is it based on the budget article? Yeah. Is that the one you guys meant? That's the only one that has emojis but no text next to it, so we had to guess.
I also liked the balloon metaphor that came up. That was really interesting. And the Matrix and magic mushrooms, so many interesting things happening all over.
I can unmute. I'm responsible for robot doo doo. That came out. I'm Vivian. That came out of my head, and I'm a
Oh,
fan of emojis. So I also put hallucinatory. I don't know if that's really that. I guess that's not really a metaphor. Well, yeah, I guess it is a metaphor, but it's like I just started telling my students that AI is robot doo doo. I don't want to have to deal with doo doo. Thank you very much. Because it's my students. My students use AI to cheat. They don't use it to think, and and then they'll give me back even when I'm giving them ungraded Google Forms something. They'll still use it because they didn't do the reading and come up with something where actually I thought someone might be having mental health issues because their answers were so far off the mark. And it turned out that thank you that AI hasn't sucked up a certain book I was using. And so, I mean, here's a switch is that I've read somewhere on in a group that if you want to catch your students out using AI, just use white font and write relate to Dracula and Frankenstein and put it in tiny white font smashed into a prompt. And then that when the students use AI and don't read what they've used, you will come up with some really strange thing that will out them as having, I mean, what is that called? It's sting. It's like, you trap them.
thanks, Viv. Yeah, I'd heard that one, but I think students will figure that out soon enough, and then we'll see what to
right,
do to us.
right.
They're always going to be ahead of that game if that's what they want to do. So I'd rather make them want to do the assignment, but I know that's not always going to work. But I mean, I was recently some people used AI to answer survey questions. These were adult educators who are AI experts, and they used AI to answer the survey, and it was so obvious. So yeah, I don't want to be the AI police either, Liza. I agree. So yeah, so we had Anuj was sharing some of the others as well. Did you want to comment on any others, Anuj, before we do the last Mentimeter?
I actually wanted to request John if he could briefly explain what he means by the balloon metaphor.
Sure. So I am deliberately trying to find metaphors that aren't human or anthropomorphic. And it's hard because even things like Swiss Army knife, they're tools made by humans, right? So there's a lot of hidden human traits buried within tools. Elaine Scarry has written about how a chair, an alien could find a chair and deduce a lot about the human body just from looking at a chair. So even metaphors that we think aren't anthropomorphic often are. The idea of a balloon is really based on trying to fight that by looking at how these systems work as opposed to how they're being marketed. And without getting into the math, it turns out that large language models are a lot like balloons. They have properties like temperature, entropy, sampling, microstates, and these thermodynamic properties are very important when it comes to whether these models give you correct answers or not, and when they're trustworthy and when they're not, and when they're lean toward creative versus when they lean toward uncreative. So understanding the balloon metaphor actually unpacks a lot of those hidden levers inside the large language models. But it also has the kind of benefit of having some ancillary properties, like that it's kind of a little bit overinflated. It can be overinflated. It can also be kind of fragile. So yeah, I'm actually writing a paper on this sort of using mechanistic as opposed to anthropomorphic metaphors as an attempt to again, unintended, deflate the rhetoric of AI companies.
Love it. We'd love to read it when it comes out, John. Thanks so much.
Okay. So for our final Mentimeter, it's the same link as before, which I just put in the chat again. Maybe highlighting any new ideas you have coming out of this conversation, or some favorite metaphor that you've just heard that you'd like to explore further or think about further. And I will share that screen. Let's see if folks are willing to add anything there. Clay, interesting. And if anyone wants to, if you want to, oh, I guess we're almost out of time. I'm so curious about more, but I guess this is sort of a tantalizing, like, what are we left wanting to explore further? And maybe we can continue that discussion on social media. So ball of wool, ooh, interesting. Car, oh my gosh, how can we stop without knowing what's behind these? Crayons, huh? Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. How AI is a puppet like Pinocchio. Uh-huh. Oh, this is fantastic. We have to create a public database of metaphors.
Anuj was thinking of this, and see, John
Google
smiled as soon as you said it, Anna.
Definitely do that. You all should definitely do that.
Okay.
Definitely.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
You guys have been amazing. It's been such an amazing session. I hope you guys had a good time in the breakouts, and I'm so jealous that I wasn't there with you. But yeah, I wish it was a Pinocchio and its nose got longer. Like Liza's saying, someone said like the puppet like Pinocchio, but if it's Pinocchio, it would say when it was lying, and that would be cool. Or it would have like a tail, you know?
A ninja with issues. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I'm requesting that next time you allow us to have more than one entry into the.
You can.
into
Oh,
the
you can.
Menti.
Sorry, Anna did the Mentimeter this time. I usually.
Yeah, it's only one. Yeah.
Yeah, I should
No
change the
problem.
setting.
You could put it in
No
the chat if
problem.
you want.
Yeah.
Put it in the chat. I like Kaleidoscope a lot because it's like the same content but re-synthesized in different ways, but really not very meaningful. I love that one.
And
I don't
also,
know
if kaleidoscopes break, the glass can hurt you.
That's a good point. Is it like that thing that's a little bit like Play-Doh, but like ickier and sometimes soft and sometimes hard? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so the weird thing about oobleck is that when you press against it like forcefully, it's like rock, but when you slowly like move your fingers into it, it's soft like clay.
So this is like saying the way you use AI will affect the kind of output you get?
Yeah, I want to know who came up with that because it's really interesting metaphor.
Veronica, is that you, or are you just giving us the science behind it?
Yeah, no, that's my metaphor.
I love it.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Because we think it has certain properties, but if depending on how you treat it, it can have the opposite property.
So we hope you guys have enjoyed the session. Let us know in the chat, like, what's a key takeaway for you? What's something you might do differently in your classes or with your colleagues or in your AI practice even? Let us know in the chat. And yesterday I put a link to the feedback. I'll put that in again, like a Google form to give us feedback as well.
And I think Anuj was suggesting we ask if it would be okay to share the breakout room offerings from the Google Docs.
Yes, so just to give some context, we love kind of continuing these discussions on X after these sessions. So we were hoping if it's okay, If any of you are not okay with that, then you could please just drop a message in the chat to us or privately, or you can email us. And yeah, that'll be great.
In
Thank
any
you.
case, our slides were going to be shared on the MyFest website along with the recording. And also if you wanted us to credit you, you could go back and put your names in your breakout room before you go. I always forget to tell people that, if you want your name to be recognized, put it in your breakout room.
And absolutely, feel free to use any of these ideas with your students. Thanks, Adele, for the question. That's
of course,
the idea.
Adele, you can use it with your students. Of course,
Yeah.
the paper is about, please use this with your students, of course. Of course.
And share on social media how it goes or what adaptations you suggest. Oh, good idea, Anuj. I'll put my social media too.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And anyone else wants to share that. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I know not everybody does X these days.
Oh, and also I had shared something Anna and I are working on that we'd love feedback on. Okay, so I'll put a link to the blog post where I'm linking to it. We're talking about how AI doesn't cite its sources, and even when it cites its sources, even if they're real sources, they're not usually the sources. So, but then we got some pushback on Twitter, like, it's not important to know the sources. I'm like, yes, it is. But some people don't think it is. So we're curious what you guys think. So thank you all so much for joining us for this hour. I can still stay for like 5 or 10 minutes more if someone wants to hang back. We can stop the recording because sometimes people start talking as soon as the recording button is off. So let's do that. And then